We're so excited to bring you our next special presenter and special interviewer. And I want to tell you a little bit about Heidi. Heidi began her legal career clerking for a justice on the New Jersey Supreme Court. Then she entered employment law, focusing on employment discrimination. And then Heidi worked with a nonprofit supporting underrepresented women entrepreneurs. She later served in leadership roles at Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers and in governance roles as trustee of the MCLE, president of the Institute for Wellbeing in Law, and board member of the National Alliance on Mental Health. So I will hand the microphone over to Heidi.
I just turned that on. Oh, I'm on. Okay. All right. Wonderful. So first, thank you, everyone, for having me here today, and thanks to the organizing committee and to Miel. I know some folks on the organizing committee aren't here, but I heard from them in advance. It's wonderful to be back here. I really do love this event. I'm not a Northeastern grad. If I would have stayed in Boston, this is where I would have gone, but I did go down to New York. And I spoke at this event, I think maybe 10 years ago or so. I still have my shirt, and I wear it, and I love it. Yes. So I'm currently the executive director of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing. It's a mouthful. I do well-being. That's what I do. That's what I focus on. That's what I've mostly focused my career on. And so I really think about the intersection of well-being, legal culture, leadership, and professional sustainability, both here in Massachusetts and also nationally. And so there's one thing that I have become convinced of, and that's that conversations right now that we're having around the legal profession, they're not fringe conversations anymore. These are central conversations that we're having about culture, about leadership, about retention, about the profession. And what kind of profession do we actually want to stay in and make an impact? And I think this is especially true for women lawyers, because many women lawyers in this profession, quote, finding your voice, it doesn't just mean speaking louder, right? It's meant navigating systems that are not originally designed with us in mind, balancing competence with likability, learning how to lead, learning how to push, but also when to adapt, and sometimes learning how to stay connected with yourself in environments that reward disconnection. And I'm going to talk more about that. So today, I'm going to talk about lawyer well-being, but probably not in the way that most people expect. So I'm not going to be talking about self-care, not as yoga, not as resilience training, okay? Those are all good things, okay? But I'm going to talk about it in the sense of professional capacity, culture, identity, sustainability, and ultimately voice. So I think that we all feel this moment in the profession right now, right? Everything feels accelerated. The pace, the pressure, the uncertainty, the technology, the expectations, right? We are more connected than ever, but we also feel more depleted than ever. It's constant availability, it's constant performance, it's constant responsiveness. And so this is what I hear from a lot of lawyers, which is this sustainable for me? Is this practice, is this profession sustainable? And it's not because they don't care about the work, right? Most lawyers care deeply about the work, and we heard that today. It's because the structure of the modern practice often feels like there is no off switch anymore. And then you layer on AI, right? Economic uncertainty, polarization, right? Social change, caregiving responsibilities, leadership pressures, and that's a lot. And then for us women lawyers in particular, right, there's often invisible burdens that are layered on top of all of this. So I love the conference theme, finding your voice, because I think that voice it's more than just confidence, it's more than just speaking, it's more than just visibility and branding. It's also about boundaries, it's about authenticity, which we heard earlier, clarity, values, leadership, and professional courage. And sometimes it's about making sure that we remain connected to ourselves in systems that, again, reward overextension, overwork, constant performance, because legal culture, it teaches us what professionalism looks like, right? What success looks like, what gets rewarded, what gets punished, and what parts of us feel professionally safe. And I think what happens over time is that many lawyers slowly disconnect from themselves without even realizing it. And that's why the conversation that we're having here really matters. And I love this quote here, and this quote has really grounded a lot of the work around lawyer well-being in Massachusetts. Late Chief Justice Gantz, he said, "The health of our legal system depends on the health of our legal profession, and the health of the profession depends on the health of our lawyers." I think this is one of the most important reframings in this space, because it makes clear that lawyer well-being, it's not separate from the profession, right? It is foundational to it. And we're not talking about comfort here, okay? We do hard things. We have to do hard things as lawyers, right? The work matters. The pressure's real. Clients need us during some of the worst moments in their lives. We've always handled pressure, so that's really not the question. But the question is whether the current structure of this modern legal practice, whether it's sustainable over decades. So in my presentations, if you've heard me previously, they're never a wellness talk, okay? I think that sometimes the word wellness gets unintentionally trivialized with these conversations, because people picture meditation apps, massage chairs. I don't know why. Next year, massage chair at this event, maybe for the speaker. Yoga in conference rooms, right? And I'm not saying I don't support all of those things. I support all of those things. Okay, I started doing meditation in law school. It was one of the best things I ever did. But it's not really what we're talking about at a high level, and in particular, the work that I'm trying to do. It's whether lawyers have the capacity to practice well, whether they can sustain judgment under pressure, whether people can lead effectively, and whether you can stay in the profession long term without burning out or disconnecting. And it's not just individual responsibility. I always talk about there's two pieces of the equation. One is individual action, and the other is systemic or structural change, and that's how we make change. So for a long time, we were really focused on individual resilience. We got to sleep more, we got to exercise, we got to meditate, we got to manage stress better, right? And all that matters, but eventually we did have to come to this question, which I think was the question that we started asking about 6 years ago when I we probably were asking it, but there was more momentum 6 years ago when the SJC created the Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing. And the question is, what if the systems themselves are part of the problem? So the profession is struggling, and we have the data to back that up. So this is a study that we conducted a couple of years ago on lawyers in Massachusetts reporting high levels of burnout, high levels of anxiety, depression, stress-related symptoms. It's here, 77% of lawyers in Massachusetts reporting being burned out from their practice in law in Massachusetts. So what the data confirms is what I think a lot of us know intuitively, right? Burnout is widespread, mental health strain is widespread, attrition is widespread. And what we saw in this study is that it's not just isolated to one setting. It's not just one group of lawyers. It's lawyers in firms, it's lawyers in government, it's lawyers in solo practice, law schools, leaders, newer lawyers. One of the things that struck me from this study was how normalized exhaustion has become. People were functioning, high performing, exceeding externally, but internally, we're depleted. And I think women lawyers in particular become especially skilled at functioning while depleted, right? Any parents out there? I have 3. Women in the profession, right, have spent years carrying professional expectations, caregiving expectations, emotional labor, mentoring labor, leadership labor, right? All simultaneously. So this is the core reframing that I want to give you, and I've alluded to it previously, is that well-being is not separate from competence. Okay? The practice of law, right, we know requires judgment, focus, emotional regulation, ethical decision-making, sustained attention, right? But all of those capacities are impacted by chronic stress and depletion. So we can't separate culture and sustainability and professionalism and performance. So it's a lot more sophisticated than just saying lawyers are stressed. What do we do? I think part of the question, and this is what we've tried to look at over the past 5 years, is what kind of environments allow people to do their best work? Under the past Surgeon General, they came out with this really great framework on workplace well-being and how it was really the responsibility of the workplaces to take care of their workers. What a concept, okay? I'm not going to talk about what's happening now. So I think one of the most important questions we can ask about legal culture and really think about this is, what have we normalized? So professions and workplace environments teach people what's acceptable. And what has legal culture normalized? Constant urgency, endless availability, emotional suppression, performative overwork, aggressive communication. No one's experienced that, right? Silence. I actually heard a lawyer not too long ago on a well-being panel, and this person was describing work-life balance as being on vacation with their family on New Year's Day while stepping away repeatedly to take client calls. That was work-life balance. And I think we all get, right, that sometimes urgent things happen, right? Sometimes a client genuinely needs us, although clients think everything's an emergency. But the issue is when the urgency then becomes the baseline. That's what we're operating from. And then what happens? There's no recovery, right? There's never space. The work's all consuming, and eventually people stop questioning it, right? And that's what normal is. That's what our profession is. And so when something's normalized for long enough, right, we stop seeing it clearly, and then overwork becomes professionalism. Aggression becomes advocacy. Silence becomes maturity. So when newer lawyers then, they inherit these norms, right? Start working without ever being explicitly told these are optional and they're not sustainable. And that's why the culture really matters. And I love that law schools, there's a lot of legal reform in the law schools where we're starting to teach these quote unquote soft skills, which are, I think, the foundational skills that are going to allow attorneys to thrive in the profession. So one of the things that we've normalized is cognitive overload. So many lawyers are functioning in a state of continuous partial attention. Every 47 seconds, we're moving on to something else. Constant interruption, constant switching, constant responsiveness. These are all data from Gloria Mark, who is a data scientist She's fantastic. She wrote a book, Attention Span. It's all about your attention and distraction, and really great stuff. We actually had her as a speaker a couple of years ago. So I think that we haven't really fully reckoned with how much technology has really changed the cognitive experience of practicing law. And we started to get into that on the last panel with the discussion about AI. So your brain, right, the modern lawyer's brain, what is it doing? It's basically going from email, Teams, text, document, Slack, notification, phone call, voicemail, portal, back to email, right? All day long, okay? So then we wonder, why do people feel exhausted all the time? And deep thinking, just as the writers told us, right? Deep thinking requires uninterrupted attention. And judgment requires space, and the legal practice is increasingly operating against both. So I think that lawyers are not burned out from the law itself. I often hear lawyers say, I love my work. I love the work that I do, right? We're burned out from the way that the modern work is structured. So when people are operating under chronic pressure and depletion, it's going to impact culture as well. It affects communication and leadership and supervision, professionalism, relationships. So again, in the study that we conducted here in Massachusetts, we asked about experiences of bias, harassment, and discrimination, as well as vicarious trauma. So here in Massachusetts, we find that lawyers have reported high incidence of experiencing bias, harassment, discrimination, and also vicarious trauma. There was a similar study conducted not too long ago in Illinois, which is a fantastic study. I would encourage you to read it. It's focused on bullying in the profession. And in that study, so many lawyers described the harmful behavior not as shocking, but expected. Just part of the legal culture, right? And that's what should be very, very concerning to us, because intimidation is not professionalism, right? Humiliation is not mentorship. Fear is not leadership. And yet, many lawyers are still operating in these environments where yelling, public criticism, belittling, aggressive emails, intimidation, it's all normalized, right? And then people fear reporting it because they fear retaliation, they fear appearing weak, they believe nothing will change, especially younger lawyers, right? So it's not a civility issue, it's a culture issue. All right, so people are less likely to speak honestly, ask questions, admit mistakes, challenge behavior, lead authentically when they feel unsafe. And those are really the items that are the recipe for professional development and performance. And so this is where I think the voice and well-being intersect, right? It's not just individual confidence, it's about the environment, culture, psychological safety. People don't thrive in environments that are defined by fear, humiliation, exclusion, and chronic depletion. And of course, all these experiences are not evenly distributed, right? Women lawyers and historically marginalized lawyers often experience these dynamics much more intensely. Okay? So I want to be thoughtful here because I have so much respect for the generations of women lawyers who came before us. Okay? Many senior women lawyers succeeded in systems that required extraordinary resilience, right? Systems that often demanded adaptation, silence, overperformance, emotional suppression, and environments that were openly exclusionary. And because of those women, many of us, including myself, entered the profession with much more opportunity than existed before. And that matters because I think we're at an inflection point now. Survival alone, it can't be the long-term model for inclusion. So I think what we're asking here is What are we actually creating in this profession in our workplaces, and really thinking about our question, our workplaces. Like, can people thrive? Can they lead authentically? Can they sustain long careers? And there's broader social movements that are backing this up. We're looking at reevaluating these inherited systems and expectations, but we're still behind. You look at the low numbers, although increasing, of women managing partners. Even less so when you look at women of color, right? And I think for a lot of us who are in that Gen X, older millennial generation, we're straddling these two realities because we understand rigor, we understand accountability, we understand high expectations, and we're trained in culture where endurance is normalized, but we've also seen the costs of all of this. We've seen burnout, we've seen attrition, we've seen isolation, people quietly leaving, extraordinary talent walking away. But I think accountability and sustainability, they're not necessarily opposites. So what do we do about this? The goal is not lowering standards, okay? Excellence matters, and the goal is how to build these environments where excellence and humanity can exist, right? So we talked about culture and what the profession teaches us, right? What gets rewarded, what's tolerated, what young lawyers pay attention to. They pay attention to not just what we say, but what we model. And so I think this is where women leaders in the profession have enormous power right now, and that's something that's within our control. There are so many things right now that are not inside our control. This is within our control to model different leadership, different boundaries, different mentorship, different definitions of professionalism. So a couple of final thoughts here is that we actually know a lot about what helps people, specifically lawyers, thrive over time. It's a study that was conducted in 2014 specifically on lawyers. It found not perfection, not endless endurance, things like autonomy, growth, connection, and recovery. People need some control, they need supportive relationships, they need psychologically safe environments, meaningful mentorship, room to learn and grow, and recovery before collapse. And those are not soft concepts. So this is again where then we tie back in our study that we conducted here in Massachusetts, because we looked at something that no other study on lawyers had looked at, and that's specifically work environments. Connecting your well-being outcomes to the actual environment and culture. And what we found is that supportive work environments were one of the strongest protective factors against burnout. And we looked at specific factors. I think I have the factors. I don't know if I have them up here, but I have all the sites in my study. But it's things like respect and interactions, clear expectations, flexibility where possible, leaders paying attention to capacity and not just output. And then you start to see a direct link to lower burnout, to better engagement, to better overall functioning. So we have this power to shape these environments. So we have to ask ourselves, like, if we're all implicated, right, we all play a part, what kind of profession are we building? Who advances? Who feels safe speaking? Who gets rewarded? What's normalized? We have the opportunity to shift culture. So this is where voice becomes collective. And it's about the daily and small interactions, about mentoring, sponsoring, setting boundaries, interrupting harmful behavior, right? You see a younger lawyer being bullied in the courtroom, right? How can you interrupt that? Making space for other people's voices. And so the legal profession, unfortunately, has changed very slowly and sometimes painfully slowly. And it's especially hard as leaders and motivators of change. It can be exhausting. And I have to tell this to my committee members over and over and over, especially Mala, who's not here. But I've seen the changes in the work. It's like, that's my lens. I look at this stuff every day. I feel the momentum. And I think there's an increasing recognition that this old model is not sustainable for many people. And I think women lawyers are really helping drive some of the most important conversations in the profession around leadership and culture and sustainability, inclusion, right? Professionalism, humanity, right? For the first time, I hear law students talking about humanity as part of a reason why we would want well-being in the profession and to be nice to each other. For decades, right, many women in this profession have succeeded by adapting themselves to systems that were never fully designed for us. But I think this is the moment to do something different, right? Not simply survive, right, but to help reshape it, to build workplaces where excellence doesn't require depletion. Professionalism doesn't require silence. And leadership is not defined by endurance alone, right? That's what we reward. And so the people in this room today, you're not only participants in the profession, right? We are all architects of what comes next. And so I hope that you come away today from this forum with a renewed sense of belonging and connection, and certainly inspiration, because I felt that all morning. And in that way, I think we can collectively make a difference. So thank you for having me.